It was late at night in the towering glass building of Orion Tech, the kind of place where most people wore tailored suits and spoke in acronyms. The cleaning crew moved silently from office to office, mopping floors and emptying bins, while the glow of city lights reflected in the windows. Among them was David Carter, a tall man with broad shoulders and tired eyes. His navy blue janitor's uniform spotless despite the long hours. He pushed his mop cart slowly down the hallway, humming softly to himself. David had worked here for almost 6 years, ever since life had pulled the rug out from under him. He used to be an engineering student, just a year away from graduating, when his wife, Emily, fell ill. The hospital bills piled up faster than he could pay them, and after she passed away, he was left with a 3-year-old daughter, Chloe, and no savings. Dropping out of school to take care of her was never even a question. She was his world. His days followed a rhythm now. In the mornings, he packed Chloe's lunch, walked her to school, then came home to catch a few hours of rest. Before his night shift, it wasn't glamorous, but it kept food on the table and a roof over their heads. Still, David's mind never stopped working. Numbers, designs, and half-finished equations still swirled in his head, left over from the dreams he'd once had. Orion Tech was one of the biggest software and hardware innovators in the country. The employees were brilliant, paid to solve problems that could change entire industries. David knew most of their names by the nameplates on the doors and the occasional polite smile. But he never forgot the projects he'd overheard them discussing. In hushed tones, especially one that had been dragging on for months. The Aegis Project. As he'd learned from discarded printouts, was supposed to revolutionize cybersecurity. But there was a flawsome kind of encryption bottleneck that kept their system from scaling beyond a certain threshold. It was costing the company millions in delays. One night, David found himself in the executive conference room, mopping near the huge glass table. A few sheets of paper had been left behind, covered in graphs and code fragments. He froze when he saw a string of numbers on one of them. Something about the sequence clicked instantly in his brain. It reminded him of a research paper he'd studied years ago about a particular type of compression algorithm that could eliminate bottlenecks like this. He didn't touch the papers, but the idea lodged itself in his mind. Over the next week, during his breaks, he started scribbling calculations in an old notebook. At home, after Chloe was asleep, he dug out his dusty laptop and began building a mock of the solution. He didn't have the company's full system, of course, but he knew enough from the fragments to simulate the process. The more he worked on it, the more certain he became. This could fix the problem entirely. Not just a patch, but a permanent solution that could save them months of work and potentially hundreds of millions in future revenue. But what was he supposed to do? March into the CEO's office and announce that the janitor had cracked their $100 million problem. He could already hear the laughter. Then fate intervened. One Friday evening, David was polishing the lobby floor when he noticed a woman struggling to carry a stack of presentation boards out of the elevator. She was dressed sharply, but the papers kept slipping. Without thinking, David rushed over to help. She thanked him, introducing herself as Natalie Hurst, the CEO. David blinked. He had seen her name everywhere, on memos, in news articles, but never in person. She was friendly, even making a joke about how the fancy people couldn't handle a simple box of files. And then, before he could overthink it, David said, "I think I know how to fix your Aegis bottleneck." Natalie stopped mid-step. "I'm sorry. What?" Her tone wasn't harsh, just surprised. David's heart hammered. I've been hearing about it. I think your problems and the way the encryption keys are being generated and stored. There's a compression sequence that can." He stopped, realizing how insane he must sound. But instead of brushing him off, Natalie set down the box and crossed her arms. Go on. Asterisk, the next 10 minutes felt like an out-of-body experience. David sketched out his idea on a piece of scrap paper, explaining the math as best he could. Natalie's expression changed from skepticism to something sharper interest. By the time he finished, she was silent for a moment, then said, "Come with me." Asterisk, she led him upstairs to a glass-walled lab where a few engineers were still working late. "Run this," she told them, handing over David's notes. They looked baffled, but complied. Asterisk, within an hour, the test results came back. The bottleneck vanished. The system ran smoother than it ever had. One engineer actually shouted, asterisk. Natalie turned to David, her voice calm, but with an undercurrent of amazement. "Do you understand what you just did? This isn't just a fix-it. Changes everything." Asterisk word spread fast. By Monday, the entire executive board knew about the janitor who had cracked the $100 million problem. Some were suspicious maybe it was luck, maybe stolen ideas, but the engineers confirmed his approach was original. Natalie called David into her office that morning. Asterisk, "I want you on my team," she said simply. "Not as a janitor. As a systems analyst, we'll cover your training, finish your degree, whatever you need. You've got a rare mind, David. I don't intend to waste it." Asterisk, David sat there, stunned. For years, he'd told himself his time had passed, that he'd missed his chance. But here it was, being handed back to him. He accepted the transition. Wasn't easy. There was skepticism, sideways glances from people who'd seen him cleaning their offices just weeks before. But David let his work speak for itself. Every night, he still came home to Chloe, who didn't quite understand what had happened. Only that her dad now wore a suit instead of a janitor's uniform. Asterisk, months later, at the company's annual shareholder meeting, Natalie told the story on stage. She described the chance encounter in the lobby, the impossible problem, and the man who solved it. The room erupted in applause when David was introduced. Chloe sat in the front row, clapping harder than anyone. Asterisk, the CEO's final words that day became company legend. Talent can be found anywhere. The real question is whether we're willing to look for it. Asterisk, David never forgot the long nights, the worn mop handle, the sound of his daughter's laughter in their small apartment. He knew success hadn't erased the struggles, it had just given him a new way to face them. And every time he passed the lobby floor, he smiled, remembering that it all started because he offered to help carry a box. Asterisk,